Abyssal Echo. The submersible, christened the Hades, groaned under the immense pressure of the deep. Outside the reinforced quartz viewport, there was only a perfect, absolute blackness, a void that had never known the sun. Lieutenant Commander Sloane Kelly, call sign Abyss, watched the depth gauge tick past 3,000 meters. Every meter down was a new world record, a new testament to the crushing weight of the ocean above. Her team of 4, the best deep-sea specialists the Navy had, were silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Their mission: locate and retrieve the black box from the USS Proteus, an experimental deep submergence vehicle that had vanished without a trace 5 years ago in the Cayman Trough, one of the deepest points on Earth. Approaching target coordinates. The voice of Ensign Davies, the pilot, crackled through the comm system. Sonar is picking up the wreck. She's in one piece, Commander, sitting on the abyssal plane. A collective sigh of relief filled the cramped cockpit. Finding the Proteus was supposed to be the easy part. The hard part was what came next. As the Hades settled on the silty seafloor, its powerful external lights pierced the darkness. They illuminated a scene of eerie tranquility. The Proteus rested upright, looking almost peaceful, as if it had simply been parked. But there was no life. No scavengers, no abyssal creatures that should have been swarming a wreck like this. The area around it was unnaturally barren, a dead zone in the heart of the abyss. Life support readings on the Proteus are nil, as expected. Petty Officer Chun, their tech expert, reported, his eyes glued to his instruments. But I'm getting a strange energy reading from the aft section. Low frequency. Biological, but not like anything I've ever seen. Sloane's gut tightened. She and her lead diver, Master Chief Petty Officer Mike Corrigan, call sign Iron Mike, suited up in their atmospheric diving suits. They were hulking mechanical exoskeletons, looking more like mechs from a sci-fi movie than diving gear, designed to withstand pressures that would turn a human into jelly. As they stepped out onto the abyssal plain, the silence was total. The water was so cold and dense it felt solid, pressing in from all sides. They moved towards the Proteus, their heavy footfalls kicking up clouds of ancient silt that hung in the water like ghosts. The sub's lights cast long dancing shadows that played tricks on the eyes. Then, suddenly, a flash of light. It wasn't from their sub, but from the wreck itself. A soft, blue-green bioluminescence pulsed from within the Proteus's viewports, like a slow, deep breath. Then, the comms in Sloane's helmet crackled with static, and through it, she heard a whisper. A faint, distorted voice, speaking a language she didn't understand. But the terror in it was universal, a chilling echo across time and space. It was a voice from the Proteus's last moments. It's just a phantom signal. Sean's voice cut in, trying to sound reassuring. Residual energy from the wreck systems. But Sloane knew better. That wasn't an echo from the past. It was a greeting from whatever was still waiting inside. The entry hatch on the Proteus was fused shut. Corrigan made short work of it with a plasma cutter. The intense beam was a violent slash of light in the eternal dark, carving a circle of hope in the dead vessel's hull. As the heavy metal disc fell away, a bioluminescent glow from within intensified, spilling out into the crushing blackness around us. The interior of the sub was a mess, but not from a disaster. It was pristine, yet unnervingly wrong. Tools were laid out with surgical neatness. Logbooks were open to half-finished entries. But there were no signs of the crew, no bodies, no struggle. It was as if they had simply vanished into thin air, thousands of meters below the surface. The whispering started again, growing louder on our private comms channel. It weaved in and out of the static, clearer now, seeming to call our names. Sloane? It hissed. The sound was like dry leaves skittering across pavement. I saw Corrigan flinch, his broad shoulders tensing. "You hearin' that, Skipper?" His voice, usually so steady, was tight with tension. "Clear as a bell, Iron Mike," I replied, trying to keep the creeping unease out of my own voice. "It's just a psychoacoustic effect. The pressure, the enclosed space. It plays tricks on the mind." I didn't believe a single word of it, and I knew he didn't either. But in the deep, you say what you need to say to keep moving. We pressed deeper into the sub, following the faint energy signature that led to the aft compartment where the black box was housed. Along the way, we saw things that defied all logic. A coffee mug, still half full, sat on a console. After 5 years, that liquid should have been dust. On a bulkhead, a series of complex equations was scrawled, ending in a frantic, repeating phrase. "It sees our fears." This place felt less like a tomb, and more like a carefully set trap, patiently waiting. Suddenly, a scream ripped through our comms, raw and terrified. It was Davies, our pilot, back in the Hades. He was shouting about the viewport cracking, that the pressure was going to crush them all. Chun, our tech specialist, frantically checked his readings. "Skipper, hull integrity is at 100%. The viewport is sound." Davies was hyperventilating, lost in a full-blown panic attack, staring at a perfectly intact window. The thing in the Proteus wasn't just making us hear things. It was making us see things. It was projecting our deepest, most primal fears directly into our minds. Sloane and Corrigan finally reached the reactor room. The black box was on a pedestal in the center of the chamber, just as the scans indicated. But it wasn't a box. It was a perfect sphere, crafted from some unknown, obsidian-like material. It was pulsing with that soft, hypnotic blue-green light, bathing the room in an ethereal glow. As we approached, the whispers in my head coalesced into a clear, distinct voice. It was my father's. I was hearing him on the day he died in a training accident, his last words blaming me for not being there. The illusion was so powerful, so viscerally real, that I staggered back, overcome with a grief I thought I had buried years ago. This wasn't a flight recorder. This sphere, this thing, wasn't holding data. It was a psychic amplifier. And for 5 years, it had been feeding on the raw terror of the Proteus crew. Now it had fresh minds to feast upon. "It's not real, Mike. Fight it." Sloane shouted, her voice a lifeline in the sea of illusion. She focused on her breathing, on the cold, hard reality of her suit's interior. The weight of her helmet, the image of her father flickered in her mind, and then faded. She had to stay grounded. Corrigan was on his knees, clutching his head. "They're all here, Skipper," he rasped, his voice full of anguish. "All the men I lost. They're asking why I lived." "Look at me, Master Chief," Sloane commanded, her voice a drill sergeant's bark that cut through the haze. She grabbed his shoulder, the metal-on-metal clang echoing in the silent, oppressive room. "That thing is a parasite. It's using your memories, your honor, against you. We're getting that box, and we are leaving." Her strength, her absolute resolve, seemed to pierce through his hallucination. He looked up, his eyes slowly clearing. "Aye, Commander." The situation back in the submersible, the Hades, was escalating fast. Through the comms, they could hear Chun screaming at Davies, accusing him of sabotaging the life support systems. "The CO2 scrubbers are failing, you idiot." "We're going to suffocate." Sloane quickly checked her suit's feed from the sub. All systems were green. The paranoia, fueled by the artifact, was turning them against each other. The Hades was becoming a tomb, just like the Proteus before it. Sloane knew they couldn't just grab the sphere and run. Its influence was too strong, too insidious. They needed to contain it first. She recalled a detail from the mission briefing. The Proteus had been testing an experimental stasis field generator. If they could find it, If they could get it working, they might be able to nullify the sphere's psychic field. They found the generator in an adjacent lab, miraculously undamaged by the implosion that had destroyed the rest of the research station. It became a race against their own sanity. As Sloane worked frantically to reroute power from their suit batteries, the Whispers redoubled their efforts, a psychic assault aimed directly at her. They showed her visions of her own death, over and over, drowning in the crushing blackness, suffocating slowly as her air ran out, being torn apart by unseen monstrous creatures of the deep. Each vision was more vivid, more terrifying than the last. She grit her teeth, her fingers flying across the control panel, refusing to give in. Corrigan stood guard, his plasma cutter held out like a holy ward against the phantoms only he could see. His knuckles were white inside his gauntlet, a statue of pure willpower against the encroaching madness. With a final connection, a surge of power flowed into the machine. The stasis field flickered to life, projecting a cube of shimmering, distorted space around the generator. The moment the field was active, the whispers in their heads stopped. The sudden, absolute silence was more shocking than the noise had been. It was a profound, almost holy peace. But the peace was short-lived. A new message came crackling through from the Hades. This one was terrifyingly calm. It was Davies. "I'm sorry, Commander. Sean was compromised. I had to neutralize him." A cold dread washed over Sloane. "I'm taking the sub to the surface. I can't let that thing get out." They were trapped, thousands of meters beneath the sea, with a murderer in their only ride home, and a primordial horror in a box. "Davies, stand down. That's an order." I screamed into the comms, my voice raw with panic, but the only reply was silence. Outside the viewport, the lights of our submersible, the Hades, began to shrink, disappearing into the oppressive blackness of the abyss. Davies was leaving us here to die. "He's not a murderer," Corrigan said, his voice a low, grim rumble beside me. "That thing," it got inside his head. It made him think Chun was a threat. In his mind, he's the hero of this story, saving us from a saboteur. The crushing weight of the deep sea felt like it was pressing in on my very soul. But desperation is a powerful motivator. An idea sparked in the darkness of my mind. "The Proteus," I said, turning to Corrigan, my heart hammering. "It's a sub, Mike. It's been dead for 5 years. But maybe not all of it." We scrambled through the cold, dead station to the Proteus's cockpit. It was a ghost ship, coated in a fine layer of abyssal silt. The main power cells were completely drained, just as we expected. But the emergency batteries, a last-ditch system designed to last for decades, still held a faint, flickering charge. It wasn't nearly enough to fire up the main engines or life support, but it might just be enough for one thing: the ballast tanks. If we could blow the tanks, we could initiate an uncontrolled ascent, a desperate, vertical launch straight to the surface. It was a 1-in-a-million shot. The rapid pressure change would most likely tear the sub and us apart, but it was a chance. It was better than suffocating in the dark, waiting for the end. As we frantically worked, rerouting the ghost of a current, we carefully moved the contained sphere into the cockpit with us. The whole reason we were down here. Our mission, and now our curse. Even through the stasis field, I could feel its presence. A cold, ancient malevolence that seemed to whisper promises of madness. With the last connection made, the old Proteus groaned, a deep, metallic sound that echoed through the hull. It was the sound of a beast stirring from a long, deep slumber. Then, with a deafening roar, compressed air blasted into the ballast tanks. The ancient sub bucked violently, tearing free from the abyssal mud that had been its tomb for 5 years. We were going up. The ascent was pure chaos. The ship screamed around us, the metal groaning and tearing at itself, never designed for such a violent change in pressure. Bulkheads buckled. The main viewport spider-webbed with 1,000 cracks. Corrigan and I strapped ourselves into the pilot's seats, riding this dead submarine like a coffin fired from a cannon. Through the shattered viewport, I saw it, the Hades rising much more slowly above us. Davies must have realized his mistake once he was out of the sphere's influence. He was waiting. We breached the surface in a cataclysm of foam and twisted metal. The sudden tropical sunlight was a physical blow, a blinding shock after the endless night of the deep. The Proteus, its final duty done, immediately began to sink back into the depths from which it came. We scrambled out, inflating our life vests just as the Hades surfaced right beside us. A pale, shaken Davies helped us aboard. Chon was alive. He'd been locked in a storage compartment, bruised and terrified, but breathing. The paranoia had vanished the moment the sphere was out of range. Days later, on the deck of a recovery vessel, I watched as a specialized team secured the sphere in a triple-layered containment vessel. No one talked about what it was. The official documents just called it the asset. But I knew better. We hadn't recovered a flight recorder or some piece of technology. We had recovered a predator, a living thing that had slumbered in the unfathomable depths for millennia. And we had just woken it up. The abyss wasn't just a place of pressure and darkness. It was a place of things that wait. And as we'd learned, sometimes when you stare into it, it echoes back. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content just like this. See you in the next one.